3, 2, 1. Hello.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know what song that's it?
No, you had me lost.
That was a voice. It was the intro to like a Boyz II Men song. They were counting backwards.
Oh
2,
no.
1, and then they came in with the.
I feel I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're talking about. Was it
Boyz II Men? Oh, it's gonna kill me because it was a boy. It was like a boy group, R&B boy group in the 90s.
From the 90s. Well, while she gets that thought, welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Tony Perks, and we have our co-host, Chantal, but don't say that to her. If you see her on the street, you might, I don't know what's going to happen to you. I'm not paying you medical bills. I'm just telling you to call her Chantal. But I'm going to keep saying Chanty, Chantizzle, Chantelli, hey. And this is the show where we unpack our bag where it pertains to truth. Oh, I'm sorry, I messed this whole thing up. Jeez. Welcome to the show, Unpack Your Bag Podcast, where we unpack our bag as it pertains to love, life, passion, and culture. I messed the whole thing up again. I don't know why I can't read today.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
So we're going to talk about...
Hold on. Before you tell the topic, I have this anecdote that I have to tell you, right? Okay. So I tell you, like, if you call me Chantelli, then people on the street that I may not know, right, they're going to call me this, right?
Okay.
So let me just say this. There are people who watch the podcast that I don't know, right?
Okay.
Which is dope, right? So shout out to everybody watching the podcast, right?
Okay.
Because it means we're growing. So
oh Lord,
my roommate comes home and she's like, yo, I was hanging out with such and such and I don't know what to do. And she's like, yeah, he likes your podcast, by the way. And I was like, he watches the podcast, right? And I don't know who this dude is, right? Okay. So long story short, if I see this dude and he's like, what's up, Chantelli? Like, like that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not going to end well. Because you don't have enough time to tell me how you know me and how you think it's cool to call me Chantelli. Like, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, so
people watch that may or may not know me personally or you personally for that matter. So
yeah,
I'm just saying,
unfortunately, I don't know if I can stop. I'm gonna try. I don't know if I can stop, guys. But I advise you, if you never met her, do probably not call her Chantelli. You should probably call her Chantal to be on the safe side. But we're gonna talk. We watched a video earlier, Anthony O'Neill's show. They were talking about wealth in the Black community and consumerism and materialism.
Yeah.
And I'll leave the link to the original video. Because I had some really good points, but it was a panel of black people, and they were in different age groups, different generations, and they were discussing their point of views from Black Lives Matter all the way to why are African Americans the highest consumers in America compared to all the other demographics and stuff, even though we make up 13% of the population.
Right. And even though we sit at the bottom of the wealth gap, right?
Yeah.
As far as like the amount of money that we have that circulates through our community and the amount of money that we make.
Right.
We sit at the bottom of that.
Yeah. So they had a lot of really good points. Something that really stuck out for me was there was one guy talking about it was more of like accountability. And so what he was talking about was they were having a discussion about Black Lives Matter, what it means, and each generation kind of had a different perspective. The younger girl was talking about how it was the same song we've been singing forever, like we want rights for ourselves and stuff,
right? But
it came into a new form. But like we have to keep fighting for what we need and for our freedoms and for us to be treated as regular human beings.
For sure.
The second person, they're like in the middle. They're just like, for me, it means like liberation, but it can be taken from different perspectives from different people, because we all have a different experience being Black people. We don't have all the same exact experience.
Facts.
And then the last guy was saying that he said Black lives matter, but who does it matter to? And he posed the question, and then he said we want it do we want it to matter to white people, or do we want it to matter to ourselves? And he said it, and what he said was, if you are saying, like he said that a lot of people like put it on their helmets, whatever, Black Lives Matter is like a logo, like a kind of like a trend kind of thing.
like a punchline.
Yeah, like a
catchphrase.
To some degree, like maybe trendish, because it's like popular right now to some degree.
Hashtag.
Yeah, and he was saying, if Black lives really matter to you, you guys can't be over here like selling drugs in your community and then say Black Lives Matter.
Yes, you can.
Because you over here killing your people.
Yes, you can.
And then turn around and say like Black Lives Matter and should matter to other people, but then you're not holding that standard for yourself. Some people are here that have like a bunch of kids out of wedlock and are taking care of their kids. And he's using for example. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that you are sitting there saying Black Lives Matter, but you don't even try to take care of the ones you created or have. So you want people to say and believe that our lives matter, but then you aren't even treating your own people that way.
Right.
Like, and so he was using that as a statement to be like who does it actually matter to? And if it does matter to us, then we need to do better as people.
Agreed.
Because at the end of the day, if we value ourselves, then by default, everybody else will value us.
No,
but if
that's
we
not
don't,
true.
If
that's
we
not
don't,
true. That's
okay.
not true.
Okay.
Are there issues in the Black community? Absolutely. There are issues in every community. You know what I'm saying? But for whatever reason, one thing that bothers me about this conversation is that, and I think I've said this on the show before, if we're saying Black Lives Matter and we're simply saying, you know, stop killing us, and then somebody in the community points out one of the negative things that exist in our community, what you do is you shine a light on the negative things that exist, right? Instead of shining the light where it needs to be, which is the fact that we getting shot down like dogs. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That's where the light needs to stay. Now, what you do is you give other people permission to point at the negative things in our community and say things like, well, you guys don't even value yourselves. And that's, and quite frankly, it's a narrative that is steeped in so much historical context that never gets mentioned, right?
Okay.
So the first comment, if we start valuing ourselves, then people will see our value. When we were in Africa, right, in Ghana, I don't think it was an issue of like us not seeing our value, right? Like when they first started taking slaves over, right? I don't think it was an issue in West Africa of us not seeing our value, right? That was an issue of them looking at us saying we have free labor. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So they devalued us the moment they used human beings to be free labor. Let's make that clear. Okay. That was the moment our value dropped to the world. Okay. So that point is not true for what I just said. Okay. The second thing is that we have to have grace. And for the reasons why our community is made up the way that it's made up. And when I say grace is we have to look at the historical context. There is no way that a culture, a race is going to put up with 400 years of shit and trauma and then make up for it in 50. You know what I'm saying? In 58 years. It's no way. It's not humanly possible. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not humanly possible. So we have to look at that part of it. So that addresses the way that we value things. That addresses the way that we find jobs. It addresses the ghettos and the extreme slums that we come from. It addresses the reasons why, you know, certain people chose certain lifestyles for themselves. It makes sense. Do you understand what I'm saying? In the huge context of things, it makes sense. Okay. So then we need to start from an educational perspective, which I say all the time, right? And then we can build to the things that they're trying to talk about on the show. Okay. Which is addressing the wealth gap. Okay. And,
you know, with that, they made a point about this would be the first generation of African Americans that would have wealth to bring into the next generation.
That's huge.
Right?
And that's huge.
So, like, it's a big win because this would be the next generation is going to be the first generation that had received wealth from their family, essentially.
Right. So, like a house or something.
I think that's good. But I was watching, I don't know if you heard this guy named Dr. Thomas Sowell. So, he's this economist. And he was talking about that the way from 1860 into 1920s, when slaves were like freed, you know, and they had no education. He was saying that from the point of like pretty much nobody learning how to read and write at all, from almost every single African American, and within like 50 to 60 years, about half of the African American population had learned how to read at that point. From from a standpoint of being in a worse position than we're all in today, with also Jim Crow laws, segregation, and just being from slave and no skills, the people came up and did really well from being in a worse situation. So how is it now that we're saying that it's really bad, even though we're in the best point of history for where we can be
because it depends on how you look at it, right? Okay. It depends on how you look at it. So there was a time, and this is my own personal theory, right? But I believe this in my core. Okay. And maybe, some of the time I spent in school, learning about criminal justice and the creation of deviant behavior in ghettos and things like that contribute to this way of thinking, of course. But there was a time when the world was segregated, right? So black people could only live in one place. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. They could only live on the east, the west side of town, wherever that is, right? Okay. In whatever major city, in whatever part of the South, wherever you live, black people could only live in one area, right? Okay. That's it. So even after slavery, right, and the time where black people are reading and starting to do things, you understand what I'm saying, and to get jobs and to make money and things like that, they could only live in one spot. Okay. So you had the black businessman living next to the black teacher. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Or the black teacher, you know what I'm saying, living next to maybe the mom who didn't have a job, right? It doesn't matter. All of the different jobs and things that they were all in one spot. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the kids are growing up looking at their neighbors, essentially, who are the same color as them, who look like them, go off and do different things, go into different sectors of industry. Okay. Okay. Well, what happens is you have the creation of white flight, where white people move into these other areas, right? Which is which is how we got to the point where I'm talking about black people could only live in one area. Well, what happens when black people are allowed to move out of that area, right? Okay. And the affluent black people, do you understand what I'm saying, who have the job, the black banker, the black teacher, are able to move out of that area, right? And essentially live in suburbs, if you will. Okay. Right? So what's left in the inner city, right? Because that's what we're talking about. What's left in the inner city is the worst of the worst, is the poorest of the poorest, right? Not the worst of the worst, right? Okay. But the poorest of the poorest, right? Okay. Who can't go anywhere else, who literally cannot afford to go anywhere else, right? Okay. So what you see is, whereas it used to be where the black businessman and the black teacher all lived next to each other, and as a kid growing up, you can see that. What happens is when they move away, what's left, right, is the poorest of the poor, the people who don't have a job. Do you understand what I'm saying? Who didn't, you know what I mean? Who weren't able to make ends meet. Do you understand what I'm saying? So then we have the creation of these inner cities and these ghettos, if you will, right? With the poorest of the poor that have no other option because they don't see one. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when you look at that, so when you look at it from that context and that position, there were black people who were able to go and move out. Yeah. Okay. Right?
Okay. So if they didn't see one, they saw people leaving the neighborhood. So wouldn't that be an opportunity to see that there's a way out by whatever occupation they're doing?
How?
Because whatever occupation that the person had that moved out, you know?
But that's what I'm saying, though. We're talking about like one generation. Like Joey, like this person moved, right, because of this, right? But what happens to the generation after Joey who was only known, you know what I'm saying? Who has only known this way, this creation, this setup to be like it is. I've only ever known a way to be surrounded by poor people. I've only ever known, you know what I'm saying? I've only ever been surrounded by people on welfare.
I get that, but the problem with that is then how would you explain that for people that just got out of slavery? The only thing they knew was slavery at that point. So how were they able to get up and produce and learn to read and write with no other tools? All they knew was slavery.
Well, because at that time what slaves were doing and going through, right? It's not that slaves didn't want to know to read and write. And when you say that slaves didn't have any skills, that's false. Slaves had an abundance of skills, right? Because we were carpenters, we were masonries, we worked the landscape, right? Slaves had an abundance of skills. Let's start there, right? Because they were free labor, right? So once they're no longer in slavery, you take those skills that you have, right? And you start paying. It's not free labor anymore. You understand what I'm saying? You're able to charge a little bit for what you have. So in slavery, it wasn't a matter of not wanting to know these things. It's about it being prohibited. Do you understand what I'm saying? So once it's no longer prohibited, right? And people are no longer being killed for reading, right? Then it's easier to spread the knowledge around that way, right? So when I'm talking about the creation of inner cities, that those two things aren't comparable.
Okay. Because I feel like if in that state, in that situation, then how come no one is looking to have skills, or how come they don't have any skills from the years that we've had known dads that had, or moms that were carpenters? How come those skills weren't passed on at all? Because one point it's like slaves had skills and they're able to, move out and kind of develop. So where did those skills just go to, the where that people in inner cities today don't have any skills at all from anything? Like, where are those skills at?
So then,
and that's not just the men. I mean, even the women had skills. So where are all these, the opportunities are there, but then it's like,
but the opportunities aren't there, right? The opportunities aren't there because if somebody is enslaved for 300 years, do you think that now that you're not enslaved, people want to pay you for your skill? Like, absolutely not. No. So then in the instance of black people and all these people coming to this country, you have, a state where Italians are coming to this country, Irishmen are coming to this country, right? And they're treated like shit, right? Because Americans suck, right? So even other white people coming to this country are treated like shit, right? In comparison to other white people, not in comparison to black people, because there's no comparison, right? But then there's a hierarchy of who you would rather have working for you, right?
Yeah. Okay. So
and black people are essentially at the bottom of that list. Is the point that I'm making?
Which I understand that. How I'm thinking is, like, if I prefer to like work with somebody, which that's fine. Like, work with a certain demographic. I know it's my dog. It's one thing to prefer to work with a demographic, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what's best for you in general. So, for example, if you have to pay if you're a white person, you got to pay a white person twice as much you pay a black person. Wouldn't you just rather hire the black person because it's cheaper labor?
Why do you have to pay? Okay, so that's.
I'm saying in the sense,
right? But that's like a now argument that you apply to. That you can apply to certain Latinx people coming over. Do you understand what I'm saying? And doing certain work for cheaper, right? Cheaper labor. That's a now thing, I think. But
even then, with what you were saying before, like black people weren't able to get, like, they have these skills, but no one's going to pay them. But if you're coming in cheaper, wouldn't you have somebody for cheaper labor?
In that instance, yeah.
I mean, we didn't all do America even today. That's why they're outsourcing in China. Yeah,
but I feel like you're taking, in that instance, yes, you're absolutely right. But I feel like one thing that you're doing right now is you're taking specific incidents or specific encounters and you're able to rationalize them for an entire group of people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like an entire
I'm not
race
saying
of
this
people.
Is for everybody, I mean, I'm generally saying it for the sake of the podcast right now. But I'm not saying this is for everybody's individual case.
No.
But this is just for the sake of, we're talking about how we can get better.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, instead of, it's like, I feel like it's always like, we need more accountability at the end of the day. And the accountability comes from us.
We do need more accountability, but you can't hold people accountable for what they don't know. That's the point. I said all of this to say, to give the historical background and the historical context, to say that you cannot hold people accountable for the stuff that they don't know. And there's a big learning gap, right? And I think there's a learning curve that some of us who have been able to, get out of dire situations, some of us who have probably never even been, in the hood or, lived in ghetto situations or whatever, right? We take that privilege that we have, and then we start to look down on the people who don't have that privilege that look like us. And we think that because they're black and I'm black and I was able to accumulate some level of success, that this other black man can also accumulate the same level of success. And the man is not what's keeping him down. He's keeping himself down, right? Like that's the way that we look at it. And unfortunately, that's not true. Right? Like that's not okay, because the situations that he had to face were more dire than what we had to face. And what he has to fight through is more dire than what we have to fight through. And what he needs, right, is a little bit of education, right? And then a little bit of grace, right? So that he can continue to fight through. But I think that's a problem.
I understand that. I do get that. But at the end of the day, you have the internet to educate you at this point. You have access to things that most people didn't have access 20, 30 years ago. It's not like you don't have access to information at this point.
Okay.
You have access to mentors for free if you watch enough YouTube.
Okay.
There's enough mentors to tell you how to start a t-shirt business, how to flip a hustle, how to garage sell, how to get stuff for free. So,
yes. But here's the thing.
So
this is privileged. Yes. This is privileged Anthony's brain, right?
Okay.
Privileged Anthony, right?
Okay.
Is understanding that, I never knew what it was like to be hungry. You know what I'm saying? I didn't grow up with like that. I never knew what it was like. You understand what I'm saying? To have to turn to crime, right? Selling drugs or whatever it is to feed myself and my family, right? Okay. I don't know what that's, you know what I'm saying? So privileged Anthony's brain is saying, well, since I never had to do that, I have the space, right? Since I never had to fight and hustle and commit crime to fulfill my basic need, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't have to worry about that. I can look into begin the business. You understand what I have the capacity, right? Mm-hmm. At that point to look at YouTube to find the information to get a business, right?
Okay.
Because we had the privilege of not having to worry about, defend, or fight for fulfilling our basic need. And what I'm saying is that there are people who don't have that privilege or that luxury. So you're talking about getting a YouTube video, looking at a YouTube video. I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying? Trying to sell X, Y, and Z so that I can make some money for my family.
I get that.
So it's
understand
different.
that.
So it doesn't matter the access to information if there are people who literally have to do unimaginable things to fight for their basic need.
But there's plenty of people that had to do unimaginable things that also got out. So if that's the case, then it is possible.
It is absolutely. I'm not saying it's not possible. That's not the point that I'm making. I'm not saying that it's not possible. What I'm saying is that we need to stop looking at the exceptions to the rule, right? Mm-hmm. The basketball player, the rapper. Do you understand what I'm saying? The person who
made it out,
flipped it, making, you know what I mean? Like that occurrence is rare. That's the exception to the rule. That's not the rule.
I understand that.
It's like the rose that grew from concrete, right? So we can't look at it.
I get what you're saying. I just feel like when looking at everything, it's almost like, don't look at the exception to the rule and look at what it should be for you compared to looking at how you can get out of it. Because if you're just going to use you're
using words like get out of it. And I'm telling you that none of it is easy, right? So that's irrelevant, right? But you're saying get out of it. I'm telling you, get out of what? I'm telling you that I have to do X, Y, and Z to put food on the table. So I can't worry about what he had to do to make it. That's not in my thought process, right? We take for granted.
Okay.
Right? Like we literally take for granted the things that we have and the things that we never once had to worry about. We never had to worry about coming home, seeing your mama on crack. Never had to experience that. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Or coming home to these dire situations, these dire circumstances that people literally live like, and it's everyday life for them.
I do understand what you're saying. And let me phrase what I'm going to say right.
Uh-oh.
I do understand, and I understand that is a reality for a lot of people. And the also reality is that people in that situation with a crackhead mother who's taking care of her siblings or his siblings,
right,
have made it out.
Like how many?
Made it out in general.
Like how many?
People have learned to look at, instead of, okay, I had to sell these drugs for a second, right, or whatever they did, but they also thought about it in game because they don't want to go to jail. Some people just want to stay and they're not trying to think about what are ways I can maneuver. The problem is that it will enable people to stay where they're at if we don't hold them accountable to how you can get out, how you can get into a better situation.
Okay, but do we honestly think, right? Mm-hmm. And granted, there are people, right? There's an exception to all the rules, right? So granted, there are people that want to stay. But do we really think that the majority of people are like, you know what? I just want to sell. When I grow up, I want to be a crack dealer. Do we think that's how it starts off? Like little 3-year-old in the hood, you know what I'm saying? He lives in the hood. He in the projects, whatever, right? Mama love him, all of that stuff. He going to school and everything, right? Do we really think that the little 3-year-old says, ooh, when I grow up, I want to sell crack?
Probably not.
Probably not. No. Probably not. Okay. So then boy X starts selling crack. What led him to that? It wasn't because
he probably needed to make some money or whatever.
It wasn't because that's what he set out to do.
I understand.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's not what he set out to do, meaning that, yes, of course there are ways to get out of it, but life sets in, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you translate that to the person working, even if you translate that same thing to the middle class person who is working, you know what I mean, and has enough to take care of their basic need, but they stay and die at a job that they hate, right? They don't want to stay there either, right? They don't want to do the things neither, right? But they stay there, right?
Yeah.
And our answer to them is like, well, what you tripping for? You got this good job, so he's cool, right? Because he has this good job, right? But he has the same thing that we all have, right? Even the kids in the hood have, right? What you have is a lack of motivation. You know what I mean? What you have is something in you that's telling you that there's no use, right? This is not going to change, right? What's the point? What's the point?
Okay.
Why? Right? So the little kid in the hood selling crack deals with that same thing that we all deal with. For what? Right? You should make yourself better so you can get this. For what? Right? Like, this is going to happen because bad things happen all the time.
You don't want to live in that lifestyle. You don't want to live that way.
That's beautiful.
That's the motivation.
That's beautiful.
Like that. So
that's
like that's the motivation.
That's beautiful.
I don't want to live like this.
That's
I don't want to
beautiful.
do this. But then
Yet.
that's where I'm saying, like, there needs to be accountability for the people that are saying like there's no opportunity or there's no education or they have a lack of it. It's false, because we have the internet to tell you all these different methods, and you can be living day to day trying to figure out stuff. But if you have time to watch TV, you have time to put on YouTube videos, see how to better yourself.
That's beautiful.
That's the end of the day.
You're absolutely right. I agree with you.
It's the truth.
I agree with you.
It
is the truth.
You know?
It's 100%. Everything you just said is 100% truth. However, how many people, right? How many people take that to heart and do something with it? Would you say the majority of people?
I'd probably say no.
No.
From not basing on factual data yet. I don't know.
Not the majority of people, right?
Okay.
I mean, just like an internal thing. We don't have factual data for none of this shit, right? We hypothesizing here. So, not the majority of people, right?
Okay. So isn't that an individual person's problem and not anybody else holding them back?
It's no,
because they're not motivated
no, because
to go
all
and
of
do anything.
Because what we don't understand and what you're not seeing is that all of these things work together to create a system of oppression. Poverty works with racism, works with lack of education, works with somebody being disabled. All of these things together work together to form a system of oppression, right? And
it
somebody
just sounds like a system of a lack of accountability.
No, it's not a lack of accountability.
That's what it sounds like.
No, it's not a lack of accountability, because if it's a lack of accountability, then that's like saying, well, if this person wasn't a criminal, then he wouldn't have been shot by the police, right? He needs to be held accountable. No, that's not what this is. This isn't a lack of accountability.
Okay.
You have to address the fact that racism is real. Yes?
Yeah.
Not just racism, that biases and prejudices are real. Yes.
Amongst everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
Amongst everybody.
Yes.
Period. Right?
Okay.
So disabled people get treated worse than able-bodied people, right? Okay. Which means that women in some aspects get treated worse, right? Or less than men, right? Okay. Which means that
so everybody has some kind of privilege and some kind of problem.
Yes.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. But what is unique is how many of these identities that a person possesses that creates a system of oppression. And what else, right, is a real thing is how a system of oppression can be greater than another one. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay, clarify.
Greater than another one. For a disabled person, right?
Okay.
Not enough, and I'm
so
hold on, and I'm dumbing this down a little bit.
Like a disabled black person is like a greater oppression because they're disabled and they're black, essentially?
Yes. So you have to deal with it on two fronts. Do you understand what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is, like, for a disabled person, and forgive me because I don't want to.
We're not trying to offend anybody. We're just having a discussion to try to make.
So,
this
like, for a
easier to
disabled
understand.
person, their system of oppression can be like, well, there's not enough handicap signs, right? So I have to work harder for the able-bodied person. Do you understand what I'm saying? To get what I need to do, what I need to do. That's what this is about. This person working harder. They have to walk. You know, this person working harder.
I understand.
Right. So certain systems, right, of oppression require people to work harder, right?
Okay.
So I would say, and this is me hypothesizing again, but I would say that racism, right, and poverty are two things that make somebody work extremely hard, maybe harder than any other system of oppression, right?
Okay.
And what we have in the black community is not only are we facing racism, but the majority of us are living below the poverty line. So those things coupled together, those two fronts, right, cause them to have to work harder than everyone else who does not have to deal with those two systems. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
So we had to be black. I didn't grow up poor. I had a single mom, but we did our thing, right? So I didn't grow up poor. You understand? But I grew up black, right?
Okay.
So I don't have to work as hard as somebody who grew up poor and black.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a different race. So they have to do double time to get to where I am.
Okay.
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 They have to do triple time to get to where somebody else is.
Okay. And
they have to do quadruple time, you know what I mean, times 15 to get to a white person. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they have to work harder just to get even.
Okay, so how does that work for someone who's in poverty and they're not even around anybody who's white? Then how are they being oppressed by white people in that particular stance? Because
white people control all of the systems.
Okay.
White people control fucking everything. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. That may not be true, but it seems like as a black person, so many facets of your life are controlled by white people.
But you said something. You said seeming is different from statistical data. So it's one thing to seem or feel like they control things, but
Okay.
Let's play this. We would need to actually look at some data.
No. Let's go down this line. We don't even need to look at the data. Let's go down this line. Okay. Who controls money?
The 1% of the population.
Okay. What color is the 1% of the population?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
Yes, you can.
I honestly can tell you.
They white. Okay. They white.
Okay.
Who controls
That's an assumption,
the majority of hiring and jobs?
Who was ever the owner of the company?
They white. Okay. They white. Right? Okay, fine. Let's do it at this table. Who runs your company?
Me.
No. Who runs your job? Where you work for?
Oh, I don't know. Some old white guy.
Okay. So guess what? So then ask me, Chantal, who runs your job?
So who runs your company?
An old white guy.
Okay.
So that's two places, right? And I'm sure if we ask,
we can use
right.
And
if we use, and let's go with, who runs the place my mom works, an old white guy, right?
Okay.
And then
assume that.
No, it is. It's an old white guy. Okay. We're not assuming that. That's facts, right?
Okay.
So we just named
3 people, 3 different jobs, 3 different companies that are owned by white people.
Yes. Okay. So that's probably the case in a lot of other places. Okay. So white people control the jobs, and white people, and we just established that the majority of the 1% is white. So white people control the money.
Okay.
So food.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the food come from?
I don't know, from farms?
From farms. Yes, they come from farms. Very good. Who owns the farms?
I don't know, maybe white Mexican people, who knows?
White people. No, Mexicans work at the farms. Let's not get it twisted. Let's not get it twisted,
look,
right? Mexicans work at the farm, right? Okay. Killer Mike did something where he wanted to do buy black for a whole day, right?
He couldn't because nothing was. He couldn't
because even the food, right, at a black-owned restaurant, came from a white farm, right?
Okay.
White people. So we just talked about our 3 basic needs.
Okay.
Money, a job, and food.
Okay.
All 3 are in control by who?
Apparently white people.
White people.
Okay.
Are we saying that all these white people are racist? No. Okay. But are we saying that they operate with a certain sort of bias? Maybe.
Possibly.
So we just named 3 separate sectors of industry that are all controlled by white people, who historically have been used, who historically have enslaved, imprisoned, and killed black people for no other reason than the fact that they were black. Okay. This is where we get our stuff from. Okay. This is where we have to get our stuff from.
I understand, but there's been centuries of slaves throughout even the Bible of times. Like everyone has been. The human population has been slavery since we can pretty much begin.
And I would argue that look at the time, look at the length of time that they were enslaved.
Okay.
Right? Compared to the length of time that Africans were enslaved.
Okay.
And then look at what came out of that slavery. Where did they go? Right? In some instances, they had to go to a new land. Right?
Okay. And not like slaves from America.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I'm not talking about slaves from America. I'm talking about the world of slaves. Right?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Look at the length that they were enslaved. Right? Okay. the length of time they were enslaved, compare that to the times that African people were enslaved.
Okay.
And then look at how the population got out of it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we were enslaved. I'm gonna say 400 years. Okay. I think that's the longest. I don't know, but I feel like that's the longest.
Okay, that's what you
And then
said.
we were trying to. What we had to do was we had to incorporate ourselves and find a way to make a life, right? Mm-hmm. In the same place that thought it was okay to enslave us. Like, it sounds fucking ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. But we had to make a life and grow from, right? The same place with the same foundation and the same people who thought it was okay to enslave us. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that we asked for jobs.
Okay.
And those were the people that we needed to provide for ourselves.
Okay. Understand that. But if that's the case, then there would have been no way the slaves would have been able to get out and get back on their feet within 50 years' time.
That's what I'm telling you.
There would have been no way that would.
That's what I'm telling you.
So then how?
So
how did that happen?
That's what I'm telling you.
How did that happen?
So the fact that we were able to make some sort of semblance of life, right, in 58 years is a testament, right, to us. Right? Okay. It's a testament to what we were able to do. It's a testament to our will. It's a testament to what slavery essentially created. Okay. Right? And what slavery essentially created was a very strong, resilient, dynamic race. Right? Okay. Because not everybody survived slavery. Yeah. Not every family line survived slavery. Yeah. Not every family line survived the trip from Ghana. Right? So that tells you what was left. Mm-hmm. What was left was a very strong, very resilient, very dynamic race of people, right? That were able to make something out of nothing, right? That's what that says about us.
Okay. So
it's not about how were we able to do it. The fact that we were able to do it is phenomenal.
Okay. So that this goes back to then, how are we the biggest consumers? But then yet we don't own any wealth at this point. If we were at one point able to, from slavery, build wealth, have it tear down on Black Wall Street, how come that has not been repeated?
How come it has not been repeated?
To the point, like, it's starting now at this point, maybe we're starting so at this point. But it just sounded like it was a white man who did this, and then that's like the scapegoat to not do anything.
No, it's not a scapegoat. That's what I'm telling you. None of this is a scapegoat. None of what I'm saying is anybody's excuse to sit on their ass. But we cannot go to educate people from a position of you need to be held accountable, from a position of negativity, from a position
it's not negative.
No, but it's criticism, right? Holding somebody accountable, right? And then in order to hold somebody accountable, you have to list the things that they're not doing, right?
Okay.
Right? You have to list the ways that they can be better, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's part of accountability, right? Okay. Well, you can't go to educate somebody starting off with criticisms.
I'm not saying you have to start with criticism. That's not saying about
but
education.
You're saying we have to hold them accountable, right?
Yeah.
So in order to hold them accountable, we have to show them all the ways that they're missing the mark.
Yeah, or we can show them opportunities they can take. But if they don't take it, then if they don't take the opportunities, that's on them.
But what I'm saying is, yes, you are right. But we have to approach that from a space of they don't know.
Yeah.
So if a kid needs to be potty trained, they have to learn to use the toilet.
Yeah.
But in order to teach them to use the toilet, we can't whoop their ass for not using it.
But
you understand what I'm saying?
I get it.
We can't yell at them for you didn't use the toilet. Well, I don't know how, and I'm still trying to figure out this whole flushing thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how.
But accountable doesn't mean you have to be harsh or strict.
No, but when
accountable doesn't mean you have to show them the flaws. Accountable is, hey,
that's how you hold somebody accountable.
The accountable is, hey, you're going to keep using the bathroom. Yeah, you mess up.
But you can't hold people accountable until after they know. So the point that I'm making is that you hold people accountable for standards that they know, right?
Okay.
If not, it's not accountability, it's education, right?
Okay.
So I have to teach you how to use the toilet. Okay. And in order for me to teach you how to use the toilet, I cannot approach that with you peed on the floor. Can I? No, because they don't know how to use the toilet, right? In order for me to teach somebody, right, I have to come at them with a certain amount of compassion, right?
Yeah.
For the state that they're in. You've been in diapers this whole time, right? And that's cool because that's all you've known, right? But now I'm gonna elevate you a little bit. This is a toilet, right?
Right.
When you have to pee, you need to use the toilet. Well, now we have to teach them what it feels like to have to pee, right? Because it's not something that they thought about before.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So now we have to get their brain to recognize when they have to pee, right? Because that's the only way that they're going to use the toilet, or their brain to recognize when they have to poop. Now we have to get them to recognize these feelings.
Okay.
Because previously it's something they just did.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that's an education process too. Right?
I understand.
And once we get them to the education process and we get them to using the toilet, right? Mm-hmm. And they know how to use the toilet, and we made the connections between now I have to pee, that's when you hold somebody accountable. You don't hold them accountable until after they know how to use the toilet. So now there are people who don't know how to use the toilet. There are people in the Black community who don't know how to use the toilet. And our instinct and our first mindset is, no, we need to hold them niggas accountable. For what? They don't know. They've never been taught, and it's our responsibility. If our goal is to level everybody up, then it's our responsibility to teach them.
Yes.
And to be patient with them. That's the only way that they're going to learn. And then after, I got you. Then we hold them accountable. But we don't go to them holding them accountable for stuff that they don't know and expecting them to know, because they don't.
Okay.
That's like saying a 2-year-old should know how to use the toilet. You're like, well, they have access to YouTube. Well, the 2-year-old then lived in a house with a toilet his whole life.
Yeah. And they have to be shown what to do. Okay. But that doesn't mean, so that's still.
They know, then why didn't you use the toilet? I taught you how to use the toilet. Now, if you boo on yourself, I'm going to whoop your ass because you know.
I understand. But the problem I have with that is, if that's like saying if nobody shows you, then you're going to stay where you're at. And this is not true. If
nobody shows you how to use the toilet,
that's totally that's ridiculous, because that's like saying the people who figured out how to use a toilet, nobody showed them, but they figured out how to use a toilet.
Let me ask you, did they figure? But here's the thing. Yes,
they may have somebody use a toilet.
Pause. They may have figured it out, right? Mm-hmm. And some of us have figured it out, right? Because it's like the whole enterprising thing, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking around, we're seeing people opening up these businesses. Do you understand what I'm saying? We see, oh, I could do that, right? Mm-hmm. But then the way that they were taught, right? It's called deviant, right? Okay. So let me give you an example. We are enterprising. America is made up on the foundation that people open businesses, right? Okay. That's the way capitalism thrives, right? People open business, supply and demand, economics, right? We're all taught this, right? Mm-hmm. But when a Black man tries to do it, whether CDs, crack, whatever it is, right? It's called deviant behavior. It's a crime. Do you understand what I'm saying? So yes, somebody taught them how to use the toilet, but somebody taught them the wrong way.
Okay.
So now the way that they're doing it, do you understand what I'm saying? Is wrong.
Okay.
And because the way that they're doing it is wrong, they're being penalized. So yes, somebody taught you how to use the toilet, but they taught you wrong.
Okay.
And you know why they taught you wrong? Because you're a Black man. Okay. So when a white man does it, it's okay. But you can't use the toilet like a white man, because when he does it like that, it's okay. But if you use it like that, you're going to get in trouble.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So even in that sense, it comes down to still, what are you going to do about it?
It comes down to, that's what I'm telling you. You're saying, what are you going to do about it? And I'm telling you, they need to be taught.
Yeah. So you have to go find someone to teach you, or you have to figure it out. At the end of the day, it's the same answer.
It's not the same answer.
It's really not.
We can't be this. That's what I'm saying. Like, we cannot be this cavalier when it comes to the education of our people. I'm not saying don't educate people. I'm not saying that like there's no empathy in this. But what I'm saying, and the answer is still the answer is, they need to learn, and they have to figure. Sometimes you have to figure it out on your own, because your circumstances not permit you to have certain options. But that's what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that they did figure it out on their own, and we called it wrong, right?
Who's we?
The system they live in.
Okay.
America called it wrong. So I'm telling you that they did figure it out.
Okay.
Right? I'm telling you that
they figured out, but now it's wrong for them. So then what are they going to do to figure out a different way to do the
I don't know. They're in prison now.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, now they're in prison, right? And then when they get out of prison, they can't even get a regular job. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's almost impossible for them to integrate. That's the point that I'm making. So they did figure it out, but they figured it out wrong.
Okay.
And now they're being held accountable for what they figured out wrong.
Okay.
Another example of fighting against a system of oppression.
Okay.
They figured it out wrong. Like, that's terrible.
Okay. I can understand that.
They figured it out wrong. Now they selling bootleg DVDs.
Okay. Then find out it's illegal. Then they go to jail.
Yes.
Then they come out.
Then what? They figured it out wrong. Except now they selling crack. And crack is a little bit more lucrative, which is probably why they fell into that. And crack is probably a terrible example. But
it's terrible.
They figured it out wrong.
So then it's like, okay, well, I figured it out wrong. I went to jail. I get out. Then I can't get a job. So let me do something I know is illegal, essentially, because I have to make ends meet.
Because I got a family to feed. I got to eat.
Okay.
Either that, or people totally disengage from either that part of it where they're constantly figuring it out, or the opposite of that where people totally disengage from life and reality and real life and they become crackheads.
I just feel like there's too much information.
It's
now.
So much.
There's too much information now for it to be just like that.
What do you do with information that you can't apply? Right? Because knowledge is the first half, right? Mm-hmm. The other half is applying it, right? Yeah. So I could put somebody up on game all day, right?
Yeah, for sure. But do you take the steps to do it?
Okay. But that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you apply that information?
It's kind of like...
So it's also teaching them to apply it. Not just giving it to them, but teaching them how to apply it.
So it's kind of like... It's like fitness. You can... Everyone knows we need to eat healthy, things we need to eat. We all kind of know what to eat, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Green shit.
You know how to work out. You know, push-ups, sit-ups, barbell, whatever.
Like basic stuff.
You know what to do.
Basic stuff, yeah.
But then you don't do it. Why?
Or better yet, you do a better example is not that you don't do it. A better example is that you do it. And you start to see a little bit of gains, right? Mm-hmm. But then your body maxes out on what you're doing.
Okay.
Right?
And then you adjust.
But how? But that's the part that, okay, so then this is a perfect example. I'm glad you said that, right? Because yes, the more likely theory is that we do it, right? Mm-hmm. Or we try, right? Mm-hmm. And then our body plateaus, right? Which happens all the time in fitness where your body plateaus.
Yeah.
And you need to take it up another notch, right? Mm-hmm. You need to go a little bit more crazy with your eating, or you need to implement carbs, right? Mm-hmm. Or you need to stop doing cardio and start doing muscle gain. Do you understand what I'm saying? It elevates a little bit, right?
Right.
So then a more reality is that we do it and then we plateau.
Okay, we do it in plateau, or we don't do it. But there's a lot of it.
Right.
Okay.
But let's give people the benefit of the doubt.
Let's say where they do it, right? And they plateau.
Yeah, let's give people the benefit of the doubt and say that they try to do it. Okay. And then their body plateaus.
Okay, so then...
But I did everything that I know to do.
Okay.
I did everything that I was taught to do, that I have access to do, right? So now that's a different level of access. Mm-hmm. And then when we're talking about lower income communities, a different level of access to them means like a school that doesn't have the resources, right? So they don't have that different level of access. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay. So, warranted, but there is something called the internet that's free for everybody. The end.
No, it's not. It's not the end, Anthony. It's not
what
the
you're saying
end.
Is like,
what
you're saying is like they don't have access to this information. They plateau. The internet has information. You can find anything on the internet.
It doesn't matter. Like, if that's the case, how long has the internet been in existence?
I don't know, like 20, 30 years?
20, 30 years. So if the internet, according to you, is the end all be all for fucking everything, then then our problems will be fixed already. And the fact that they're not, the very fact that they're not tells you that there's more needed. Yeah. Yes or no?
Okay,
period. Right? So you're saying, according to you, the internet, boom, you're trying to shut down all my arguments with the internet. You got the internet, nigga, do something for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. But the internet has been in existence for 30 years, right?
Yes.
And if the internet was enough to solve problems, then they would be solved. Yes?
It does not go down to individual accountability for them not taking the steps.
No, if the internet was enough to solve problems, wouldn't they be solved?
Well, it depends on
if the internet was enough.
How you use the system.
Fucking exactly. It depends on how you use the system.
So if you don't use
so people have to be what? Taught to use the system. Yes, the internet exists. So fucking what?
Okay.
Just because the internet exists doesn't mean that
doesn't mean whether you don't have access to information.
That's what I'm telling you. If access to information was enough, then problems would be solved. But the very fact that they're not tells you that that's not enough.
Because the people aren't doing what they need to do.
Okay.
Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, if the information is there and they don't do it, then whose fault is that?
So then your answer to the world's problems is the internet.
No, I'm not saying the internet is the only thing. What I'm saying is your basis was they need to be educated. They are educated because they have resources to everybody on their phone that you can get a free phone.
Pause.
So if you have access to the internet and you have education,
you can get a free phone.
Yeah,
from where?
From Obama back in the day. If you're on GR, you can still get a free phone today.
And it has internet access?
Yes, 5 gigs a month.
So 5 gigs,
and then you can go to McDonald's to get free hotspot.
So if that was enough, if it was enough. Then why do we still have the same problems?
Because people
it's not enough.
People aren't being held accountable for their action because they're blaming somebody else for the issues that they're creating by not taking the opportunities. That's all I'm saying.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
It is enough.
It's not enough.
The
because if it was enough, it's not. We're not talking about some people. We're talking about as a whole. Okay. As a whole, it's not enough. As a whole. It's not enough. If it was enough, then we wouldn't see what we're seeing.
The problem is not the internet. The problem is people. People. That's the
so
the
then
issue.
Racism doesn't account for any of the issues that are facing the black community.
I'm not saying it doesn't account for anything.
So does racism account for any of the issues facing the black community?
I
yes
would
or
say
no?
some, but not the degree of what it's stated like.
Okay. Does poverty account for any of the issues of facing the black community?
It can, yes.
Do racism and poverty work together?
It can, yes.
Okay. So if racism and poverty work together, and you just said that racism holds us back and poverty holds us back, so then the two together would hold us back a little bit further, yes or no?
I don't think that racism has much to play on it like everyone's saying it is.
What do you mean? Why not?
I don't believe that racism has a big part like everyone's saying. I think
how?
This comes down to more people not taking their opportunities.
But this is what I'm telling you.
Poverty is one thing, which I understand.
This is what I'm telling you.
But no one's in there in the hood of a white guy's telling you can't do this.
But that's what you're not understanding. You're not understanding the way that racism forms a system of oppression, meaning that racism keeps people out. It keeps people from achieving.
So how come
it keeps opportunities away?
Then how come the slaves were able to get up and build for themselves, and black people aren't doing that now? Then if that's the case,
they are doing it now.
Okay.
That's what I'm telling you. They are doing it now, but there's some people who are not because racism and poverty have kept them out.
I understand. So that's when you build your own community, build your own
with
business,
what?
With the people that you have, instead of being the biggest consumers for outside of your community.
You can't build your own community, right? And granted, these are all things that we need to do. Yes, everything you're saying are things we need to do. But in order to do that, there has to be money circulating in your community. Well,
how are we the biggest consumers of everybody else, but not ourselves then? That's what you're saying.
Because here's the thing. We just watched, right? We just watched the thing where Killer Mike tried to circulate his dollars in his own community, and he saw how difficult that was. So if Killer Mike, the millionaire, can't do it, what makes you think that Joe Schmo, the minimum wage worker, can do it? I'm not
saying that your only money has to only be spent in black.
But that's what I'm saying.
You can build.
What I'm saying is that you have to look at the big picture. Big picture wise, you can't do it. You can't do it. Big picture wise, you can't do it.
So what do you do then? You start building from where you're at this point, which is take the opportunities to either start a business or go to school, whatever it is you desire that you want to do. But at the end of the day, blaming somebody else is not going to get you anywhere.
It's not about blaming somebody else. It's about understanding how something outside of your control prohibited you.
Okay.
It's about understanding how something outside of your control made it harder for you. It's about understanding how something out of your control, right, put it just a little bit out of reach. Okay. That's what it's about, right? Everything you're saying is absolutely true. But the way that you're saying it eliminates the way that people learn to do it. Because what you're saying is that what are we doing when they have the internet? They can learn from the internet. They can just do this. They can just do that. They can just do that. But if it was that easy, then people would be doing it.
I never said it was easy, but most people don't want to work that hard. Maybe they don't want to work that hard to get out of the situation.
But what I'm telling you is that it's not about working too hard, because what I'm telling you, what they have to do is different than what we have to do.
I agree. I know that.
So they have to work harder than even you and I have to work just to get to where we are.
I understand.
So then how can you tell them that they're not working hard enough? That's what you just said. I'm not
saying they're not working hard. What I'm saying is that at the end of the day, your situation is your situation, and you can blame a white person or oppression, or you can figure out a way to get out of it.
If it was that,
I'm not saying it's.
If it was
that
simple, then people would be doing it.
I'm not saying.
And you're not addressing. What you're not taking into consideration is the wealth gap. What you're not taking into consideration is the racist hiring practices. You're not taking into consideration when it comes to trying to apply for a home mortgage in the way that federal policies have systematically kept Black people out. Right? You have to take all of these things into consideration. So it's not about working hard. It's about how this system literally keeps us out. You also have to look at the educational system, and you have to look at who has access to this system, right? You have to look at who has the best of the best, right? And who's able to achieve and who doesn't have that. And by association, they're not able to achieve as much.
And I'm not saying that there is no racism. I'm not saying that it doesn't play any part.
No, but what you're saying is that it's not big enough to keep you out. That's what you're saying. You're saying racism yes, it's there, but it's not that big of a thing to where it's keeping you out from achieving.
Okay.
No?
No.
Okay. So then what are you saying?
I'm saying that at the end of the day, everyone needs to be accountable for themselves and what they can achieve. No one is here to save you. No one's going to pick you up and get you out. You have to take the opportunity. Sometimes you may not want to because it's too hard, because you do have other life circumstances. But if you want it that bad, you'll do it. It's the same thing in fitness. I don't want to get in shape. That's why I'm not in shape. I have the opportunity to do it. I just don't, because I don't feel like it. I don't have enough because I'm doing other things. If I really wanted it, if I desired enough, I would do it. But
for all Black people across the board.
I'm not saying for all Black people. I'm saying there are a lot of people who use that as an excuse. And the problem I'm seeing is that is the excuse that's going to keep you where you're at forever. And all I'm saying is I don't want people to have that as an excuse to not achieve, because it's harder for you, because you were put in a situation that you were in poverty, but your homie made it out with your same circumstances, which means it's possible for you too. But you're not taking the opportunity because maybe your mindset is here. Maybe you didn't think it was real. Maybe you just don't want to do all that stuff because you rather be over here. Maybe you want to spend money and be flashy instead of saving your money and putting it into a budget. So these are things that we're not holding accountable for people, that they need to be held accountable so we can actually help somebody get out. I'm not saying that oppression isn't real. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. All I'm saying is at the end of the day, you can keep blaming that and not going anywhere. And how long would that work? How long are you going to sit there and say, the white man did this?
Or you can understand the system and learn how to overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in order to do that,
that's the internet is for. That's the internet.
No, the internet is not.
There's a lot of ways around things. You'll be surprised.
It's not that I would be surprised. It's just that I have a different level of empathy for people who have to work harder than I have to work.
I have empathy for them, but the reality is, empathy or no empathy, your situation is still this. Whether I feel for you or I don't, the reality is your situation is this. And how can I help you get out of it?
You can't.
So then the person has to get out of it.
No. What I'm saying is that, no, we can't help. But what I'm saying is that if you don't have a certain level of empathy for their situation, you can't help them.
I'm not saying I don't have empathy. What I'm saying is, empathy or not, the situation is the same whether you have feelings about it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that I don't have empathy. I'm not saying that I don't empathize, that it is harder for some people, especially in poverty and stuff. But what I'm saying is, the reality is your situation is the situation that you're in. Whether I feel for you or not, whether you feel for you or not, that's your situation. I can have empathy, but it's not going to change you if you're not trying to change. You can have empathy, but empathy doesn't change your work ethic. So what I'm saying is, there needs to be some accountability for this stuff, not just because of oppression, but because we are this strong, then we can get out of anything. And it's been proven over years and years and years of the destruction of the black man that we've overcome everything. So at this point, in my opinion, it comes down to, part of it is a lack of accountability that we don't talk about enough, because everyone's too busy saying white people or white cops are shooting black people, even though there's a majority of black people killing black people way more than the instance of the small amount of white people or white cops shooting black people. The amount is huge. So it's hard to say, well, Black Lives Matter, But then there's more blacks killing way more blacks. And not just because obviously demographics, like obviously there's black crime and there's white crime. You know, white people kill more white people. Obviously black people kill more black people. But at the end of the day, everyone's protesting over what a few white cops did. But then they're not protesting for the men or women that are killing each other by selling drugs in the neighborhood or gangbanging or you know, whatever. So, like, where's the accountability for that? I want accountability for the officers, yes, but I also want accountability for the black people who are doing a disservice to themselves. I want it on both ends. Because it's one thing just to have white people care, but what does it matter if we're going to be doing the same exact thing?
I feel like you're missing it. And I hear you, because we do, ultimately, yes, we do need accountability. Ultimately,
I think that's more important than the oppression. I think that's more important than the oppression.
It's not, though. It's not more important. Nothing, and that's why I think nothing can be more important than that. Nothing can be more important than that. Mm-hmm. Nothing can be more important than that. Okay. You're talking about black on black crime. It's not a thing, because studies show that members of their own community are likely to commit crimes against members of their own community. That's why I said there's white on white crime. But we only talk about it in the black community. No. We never mention it for white folks. So why do we talk about it for us?
Because white folks are not blaming us for their issues right now.
But guess what?
We're blaming them for our issues.
Guess what?
And not holding people accountable.
People, first of all, there are white people blaming us for their issues. Okay. Right? But they do it in a different way, right? Okay. See Donald Trump, right? Okay. Because poor white people, right, look at black people who have a certain amount of money and a certain amount of influence. They look at us and they hate us. Do you want to know why? Because we're keeping them from achieving their American dream. Because to them, they should have more access to it than we do.
How so?
Because we're taking the jobs, right?
Because they're not seizing the opportunity. Is the problem.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, right?
Okay, we got to finish right with this because it's already an hour.
Damn. We gotta wrap it, but this is part two. We'll have to break this up. This is what I'm saying, though. Nothing is bigger than the oppression, right? And the fact that we have people who are able to point the finger at something that is so minuscule, right, and blow it up for our community, but not anybody else's. You're taking away from the point.
I'm not taking away from the point. What I'm trying to do is build the black people by, instead of worrying about and focusing on the oppression that happens, at the end of the day, your situation is still, you're here. So what are we going to do to get out of it? Instead of worrying about all the oppression in the world, all the racism in the world, all the 400 years of slavery, even though we're in the best spot of our lives as black people, why don't we focus on getting out of the situation instead of pointing the finger about anybody else and how it was wrong? Because we're just wasting time pointing at somebody else, when you could be figuring out what you can do to get out, or to make your situation better, or to clean up your community. I'm not saying that black on black crime is like a thing, like white people don't do it. White people do the same thing. Asian people do the same thing. There's white on white crime. There's Asian crime. But we're all saying that white people,
that it's
white
black
cops
on black
are just
crime.
Mainly killing black people.
No, we're not saying mainly.
When it's a small, when it's a very small amount of number.
Nobody ever. I can't remember anybody who ever said that white cops are mainly killing black people.
I'm hearing we're protesting for white cops killing, but we're not protesting for black people killing black people.
No. You know what we're protesting for? It's not about number wise, right? If we're looking at comparison, nobody is saying that cops are killing the majority of black people. Nobody once said that. What we're saying is that how come the police find a way to disarm and arrest white people all the time, but when it comes down to trying to arrest and disarm black people, we end up dead? That's what we're saying. We're not saying they kill us. We're not saying they kill us more than we kill ourselves. We're saying that they kill us. Right? That's what we're saying. We're saying that they kill us without accountability. That's what we're saying.
Okay.
Right? That's what we're saying. That's it.
All right.
All right. As far as Black Lives Matter. So when you find a way to put other things into it, you miss the point. Right? Okay. Because the point is police accountability. Right. The point is, why is it that the white people can storm the Capitol, right? And the police move the gates? Why is it, right, that the white people can do all of this, but when it comes down to us and our interactions with the police, they're always mainly negative? That's what we're saying. That's what that argument is about, right? Okay. So we don't need to protest for black people killing black people, because that's not what we're talking about. Okay. That has nothing to do with it. Just like we're not talking about how white people kill white people. That's not what we're talking about. That has nothing to do with it. Those are two different issues, right? Okay. But the fact that we find a way to link the two together is some white people shit. Right? Because that's what they do to take away from our cause, right? Well, you shouldn't be worried about how police kill black people. You should be worrying about how you kill yourselves. No. That's not.
Okay.
Right? That's what white people do to distract us from the issue.
Okay.
Right? And in this particular case, Black Lives Matter is about how we ask for police accountability. That's what that's about. Nothing else. Don't mix the two.
Okay, understood. I got that.
That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is nothing. Like, the second thing is yes, we need accountability, right? But how come we're so quick to hold ourselves accountable, right? And we should, but we do need to hold ourselves accountable. But when it comes down to holding, in this conversation, for example, the police accountable, we start looking at other things.
I think the police should be held accountable.
We start looking at other things. We start looking at how black on black crime is a thing. We start looking at the ways that we sell drugs to our own people as a thing. We start looking at all these other things, right, that exist in the community, and it exists in every community.
Yeah. Right.
It exists in every community, but we only spotlight it because we're asking for police accountability. That's why there's a spotlight on black crime, because we ask for police accountability, right? So to take away from the spotlight on police accountability, let's shine a light on black crime.
I think there should be a police accountability. I think there should be
let's shine a light about how black people sell drugs to other black people. White people sell drugs to other white people, right? But that's not the fucking point. The point is we ask for this.
I understand,
but y'all talking about that.
I understand that. So there can be two conversations, but that's the problem. The bigger conversation is what's killing more black people.
It's not.
And what can we do to help each other? Because at the end of the day, you're saying if the system is controlled by white people,
that's not the bigger conversation.
Why are we expecting for them to change? Why would you expect for them to change?
We need to separate and look at the thing. We need to separate and look at things individually. All of this shit doesn't merge together. Right. Are we talking about police accountability? Right? Are we talking about systematic oppression? Or are we talking about the way that the two work together? Right? Like, what is it that we're talking about? Because if we talk about one thing, then people are automatically going to shine a light on something else to take away from what it is that we're asking for. That's white people shit.
Okay. How I feel at the end of the day, because we got to wrap this up. But I think they're for me, I would like to see more accountability for what we can do. Because a part of it is information. Like, there are an access to some schools, which I get. You can't really get into certain schools, but there is access to information all over the internet that's free now. That's freely and readily available. And if you don't take and do anything with the information, whose fault is that? If you have access to the information, like schooling, for example, but you don't ever want to go read a book, whose fault is that at this point? And so what I'm saying is just, I'm trying to look for more accountability with us, because at the end of the day, if everyone's saying that white people are this or white people are that, for example, then why are we looking to them to do anything, to even be accountable? If that's the case, why don't we just focus on us and what we do? And that's why I was saying we need more black officers as well. Because if we had more black officers, not saying that it's going to change the whole thing, but if you had more black officers in the areas that black people are getting shot at by white police, it may not be as much of a thing to get shot because you're dealing with another black person. That's just my opinion. But we got to wrap this up. You got any last words before you go? I'll let you say what do you need to say, but we got to wrap it up.
I don't have any closing words. I'm finished.
I think this is a good conversation.
I think we need to stop having this conversation with each other, and we need to invite somebody else in to have this conversation with us.
Yeah, I think
that's what I think.
Yeah.
So let's figure out who we need to talk to, right?
We need a lot of different perspectives. We need a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, we need we definitely do. We definitely do. We need like a panel.
We're on two sides of the fence.
Yes, like two very different sides of the fence. Like, I'm on that side and you're on that side. So we definitely need somebody else.
I think the cool thing is that, like, two people on different sides can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times this wouldn't happen normally. This would be turned into people hating each other and wanting to fight each other because we have a different point of view on getting to the same outcome. Right. So I think this is good because it shows two black people with different perspectives being able to communicate, to
talk about it,
and that's it. And bygones be bygones. Yeah. We all have the same agenda regardless.
Yes.
So ultimately, whether you go left or right, we're all going this way
in the same direction. Somebody was going we're gonna go miles away from each other, but we're still moving. We're still going north. We're still going north, but better than that, to even see like different black people kind of see different ways, you know what I'm saying? Like really feel passionate on one side about, you know what I mean, their points of view, and to have another Black person on the opposite side of that is also very, very refreshing, because we think that because we're all Black, we're all going to feel the same way about the Black issues, and we're not,
and it's
right?
Not,
and
we're
that's
all
okay,
very different.
Right? Like, and that's okay.
Like someone who's like 17 or 19 is probably a very different experience for me and you.
Right.
They're probably white people saying the N-word now. Cool. Hey, yo, what up? It's like nothing for us. So then, it ain't like that.
Yeah, seeing that all the Black people are not necessarily gonna see this, not gonna see things the same way, I think is important to highlight.
Yeah, this was good about this conversation. We went long, but
how long was it? We're gonna have to split it up.
Hour and 11 minutes.
Yeah,
I think this is good. I think people need to see this kind of conversation.
Passionate dialogue.
Yeah. Like
where I'm shaking and then you shaking and then I'm quiet and then you quiet. No! Right? And I do I do the bulk of the yelling. I'm sorry. But I do the bulk of the yelling. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, because for me, it's almost like when you said like you can't, like you teaching and you're like, I don't know why you don't get this, right?
Yeah. It's like what are you saying? I'm like
2 + 2 is 4. I don't know why you don't get this, right? And me, I'm like
3 + 1 is also 4 though. You're like, that's not the point.
Yes, and that's exactly
how I feel. 2 + 2 is 4. I'm like, yeah, but 3 + 1 is 4. So what are you talking about here?
And I'm like, but we're not talking about 3 + 1, right? And it's the same thing.
Oh my God, that's fun. This is really good. This is really good. I'm very happy with this.
Because like, I don't know why you don't see it.
it's like I see.
It's right there.
I was like, we're that's the cool thing is, we all have the same agenda. We just have different methods of getting to the same agenda.
Absolutely.
You know, and the good thing is that we can use this as an example for people. This is why we don't need cancel culture. Because
this is the exact reason.
Because even though we have different perspectives and the way we're going to go about it is different, we ultimately all want the same goal.
Right.
So, and that's what I think that's the caveat of all this.
Yeah. And the truth is like, if we take what I said and what you said and merge it together, boom, right? Like it's perfect, right? Like if we take the empathy and the understanding of the way that things are, right, and couple that with accountability, then boom, we really have. Then we have
a
something.
Recipe for amazingness.
Exactly.
You know, so,
then we have something, right?
So I'm more on the accountability side. Anyways,
we need.
All right, we gotta wrap it up, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Unpack Your Bag Podcast. You guys know what to do all that good stuff. If you like this, just press the like button. It helps the algorithm and stuff.
You know what we did not talk about at all?
What
was the wealth gap? That's what we're supposed to be talking about. We're supposed to be addressing the wealth gap.
Well, I mean, it is kind of all this kind of plays into it to some degree. But
we didn't talk about materialism.
I mean, well, we are the biggest consumers, but we'll have to save it for another episode.
We didn't really.
We never get on topic.
There's a reason for that. You know, I have a reason for that too, right?
Yeah.
You're like, we're the biggest consumers. We need to hold ourselves accountable, and I'm like, but there's a reason for that. But like, let's unpack the reason for that, right?
Unpack the reason, but change what
the
happens.
Behavior.
Change the
but
behavior.
But in order to change the behavior, you have to unpack the reason.
Yeah, have some awareness, understand why you do something, and then once you understand. Change.
So we got to talk about that next week.
But some people want to like understand and then still be assholes. Like they be like, yeah, you know, I'm narcissistic, but you know what? I'm a narcissistic. You know,
like, yeah, but I like it.
You know, like
yeah, but I like it. So we got to get into that next week.
Yeah,
the materialism.
We're gonna talk about it.
But you got them J's though. Oh, and I can already see the thumbnail now. The thumbnail should be me and a pair of Jordans because know I love.
I don't do Jordans. I
love a pair of J's. So the thumbnail should be me and a pair of J's, and it's like, but you got them J's though, and then. On the other side, it should be like stacking wealth, right? With like a house and like a picture of an IRA and a Roth.
Are you guys still?
Oh! I was like, what's an IRA? Like it's like a person.
IRA and a Roth.
Yeah, we are still recording, but we're finishing up right now.
It's okay.
We'll keep this. Okay, all right. We'll tune in next time, guys. Thank you guys so much. Tune in for next week's episode on Wednesdays at 3:30 p.m., which is Western Pacific time, I believe is where you're in. And we'll see you guys next one. Peace, love, and hair grease. Talk to you guys soon.
I'm wearing my Jordans next week.
Don't wear them.
Them lonely boy blues, only boy blues. Them lonely boy blues, only boy blues. You don't hear about it every day in the